We all know that Spanish and French are Romance languages. But have you ever noticed something weird? Spanish sounds so Latin. Aqua becomes agua, easy, right? But French? What happened there? Well, the real question is, what didn't happen to French? In this video, I'm going to break it down with 33 simple rules that will help you decode French. By the end of this video, if you already speak Spanish, you'll recognize around 80% of the shared vocabulary between Spanish and French without memorizing endless lists, and even convert Spanish words into French like a pro. I know 33 rules sound like a lot, but don't worry, I'll go through them fast and easy. Pause the video whenever you want, at the parts you find the most interesting. Ready? Let's unlock the secrets of French. Before we start with the rules, let's start with a quick overview of what's going to happen. So let's start with these phonemes: K, T, P, V, and G. These are the phonemes we find in Latin. Let's read examples: aqua, salutare, opera, credere, videre, legere. Now, what happened to the West Romance languages? They went through a process called palatalization. And these phonemes softened into the B, even they lost intervocalic Ds and Gs. So these words became agua, saludare, opera, obra, creere, vuere, leyere. Okay, this sounds something like some sort of Spanish or weird Italian. This is the vulgar language spoken in the West Roman provinces. What happened next? French and Spanish went through vowel shifts, but French took it too far. So words like this became something like ewe, saluder, webere, creire, ver, liere. Still doesn't sound French, right? So let's move on a bit further. As the next stage, French went through another process that Spanish didn't go through, which is loss of G, loss of D, and the B became V, and words went through another big vowel shift. So they became o, saluer, œuvre, croire, voir, et lire. Besides consonants, let's talk about vowels. In Latin, the vowel o and e often turned into diphthongs in both languages. In Spanish, e became ye and o became we. And in French, e also became ye and Latin o became e. For example, Latin bene, Spanish bien, French bien. Latin populus, Spanish pueblo, and French peuple. But here's the interesting part. Sometimes only one language diphthongized the vowel while the other didn't. Let's read a few examples. Tertius, Spanish tercio, whereas French tiers. Hora, Spanish hora, whilst French heure. Now let's read the counterpart. Latin tempus, Spanish tiempo, French temps. Latin porta, Spanish puerta, French porte. So keep in mind that in some cases, Spanish and French will coincide in this, and in some cases they won't. If you're curious to find out which Romance languages kept the E and the O from Latin, the answer is Portuguese and Catalan. Now that we got a gist of what's going to happen, let's start with the rules. So this is one of my favorite rules, that's why I call it rule number 0. In Latin, when we had a vowel followed by an S, in French, the S disappeared, and instead they put an accent circumflex on top of the vowel. Let's read a few examples. Castaño, castaños, châtain, castillo, castellum, château, pasta, from vulgar Latin pasta, pat, estar, essere, stare, the mix gave us être, finiestra, that's kind of obsolete in Spanish, but we can find it still in verbs like defenestrar, which means breaking all windows, fenestra, fenêtre, bestia, bestia, bet, isla, insula, il, desayunar, desayunare in vulgar Latin, dîner. In this case, desayunar means breakfast, but in French it means having dinner. Why? Because desayunare means breaking the fasting, and in Spain, the most important meal was breakfast, and for French people, the most important meal was the dinner. So by breaking the fasting, they call it dîner. Maestro, magistrum, maître, costa, costa, got, costar, constare, cute, gusto, gustus, gu. Rule number 1. Words in Latin having an a. Spanish retains them and French often turns them into es. For instance, amar, amare, eme, pan, pane, pan, mano, manus, man, nacer, nascere, naître, path, pacem, pe. Rule number 2. Words that end in Latin scere in Spanish retains it as ther, and French turns it into être or watre. For instance, nacer, nascere, naître, conoscere, connaître, parecer, parescere, paraître, crecer, crescere, croître. 3. Words in Latin that have al and ol, Spanish retains them and French turns them into o and u. For instance, al, adile, o. Salvar, salvare, sauver, saltar, saltare, sauter, alter, now we pronounce it as otro, altro, autre. Malvaro, from vulgar Latin malefatius, move, colgar, collocare, coucher, cuello, collo, cu, golpear, colpare, couper with the meaning of cutting. Rule number 4. Words in Latin that have CL, PL, French retains them, Spanish turns them into double L with the pronunciation as J. For instance, lluvia, pluvia, pluie, llano, plano, plein, llorar, plorare, pleurer, llave, clave, cleve, llamar, clamare, clamer with the meaning of claiming, llanto, plancto, plante with the meaning of complaining. Number 5. Words in Latin that have MN, MB, CA, GA. French turns them all into G, and Spanish retains more features. For instance, dañar with the meaning of damage comes from Latin damnare, which means to condemn or to sentence to prison, gave us danger in French with the meaning of danger. They all keep in common the sense of damage. The sense of condemning gave us the sense of punishment, therefore a damage, and that's how it evolved into something dangerous or something that may damage you. Soñar, somniare, in French, songer, which means thinking and not dreaming. Cambiar comes from Celtic cambion, changer in French. Plombicar, which is a word which comes from plomo. Plumbicare, that's vulgar Latin. In French, plonger, which means diving. Manducar, manducare, in French, manger, to eat. Navegar, navigare, nager, with the meaning of swim. Rule number 6. Words ending in a, Spanish retains them, French turns them into is. Ella, illa, elle, una, une, luna, lune, contenta, contente, isla, insula, il, fiesta, fête, bestia, pet, testa, not widely used in Spanish, testa meaning a pot of flowers, and tet meaning head, tabla, tabula, table. Rule number 7. Words in Latin with a C, Spanish retains them, some of them as a G, but French turns them all into CH. Can, not widely used in Spanish, perro is more commonly used, comes from Latin canis, canem, French chien. Casa, casa, chez. Used differently, chez moi means in my house. Castillo, castellum, château. Cantar, cantare, chanter. Castagno, castagnos, châtain. Cazar, captiare, chasser. Calor, calor, chaleur. Carne, caro, carnem, chair, with the meaning of flesh, not of meat. Gato, catus, chat. Number 8. Words in Latin that have PLLT, French retains most of them, such as ancho, amplus, ample. Escuchar, auscultare, écouter. Cuchillo, cultelos, couteau. Words in Latin ending in atus. Spanish retains them as ado and French turns them to e. For instance, enojado, inodiatus, ennuyé. Fatigado, fatigatus, fatigué. Comparado, comparatus, comparé. Terminado, terminatus, terminé. Rule number 10. Words in ata. Spanish retains them as ada and French turns them into e. Enojada, inodiata, ennuyé, fatigada, fatigata, fatigué, comparada, comparata, comparé, espada, spata, epée. Rule number 11. Words in Latin ending with los and les, Spanish retains them and French turns them into o and e. For instance, alos, alas, adilos, adilas, o. Caballos, caballos, chevaux. Trabajos, tripalios, vulgar Latin. Travaux, ojos, former olios, oclos, oculos, you. Cabellos, capilos, cheveux. Hospitales, hospitales, hôpitaux. Nacionales, nationales, nationaux. Generales, generales, généraux. Number 12. Participle in Latin ending in itus, Spanish will be ido and French will be u. Creído comes from creditum, cru. Bebido, bibitum, bu. Sabido, sapito, vulgar Latin, su. Debido, debitum, du. Habido, habitum, u. Visto, visus, vu. Number 13. Words in Latin starting with ST, SC, and SP, Spanish retains them as S, but French loses the S. Estudiar, studiare, in vulgar Latin, étudier, estio, aestium, ete, estrella, stella, étoile, escuela, schola, école, escudo, scutum, écu, escucho, ausculto, écoute, esposa, sponsa, épouse, espada, spata, épée. Rule number 14. Words in Latin that start with an F. Spanish, some of them turn them into H, and French retains the F. Hambre, faminem, in vulgar Latin, faim. Hembra, femina, femme, with the meaning of woman. Hijo, filios, fils. Hablar, fabulare, fabuler. Horno, furnos, four. Huir, fugire, vulgar Latin, fuir. Hada, fata, fe. Hacer, facere, faire. Hecho, facto, fe. Humo, fumus, fume. Number 15. Words in Latin with intervocalic L and S. Spanish turns them into J's, and French retains them. For instance, oreja, auricula, oreille, ojo, oculus, œil, mojado, moliatus, mouillé, trabajo, tripalium, travail, consejo, concilium, conseil, hijo, filius, fils, viejo, veclus, vieux, jabón, sapo, saponem, savon, jeringa, siringa, serang, jarabe, from Arabic, sharab, sirop. Number 16. Words in Spanish ending in bre comes from Latin mine, and French retains them as an M. Nombre, nominem, non. Hombre, hominem, homme. Costumbre, vulgar Latin, costumine, coutume. Hambre, faminem, faim. Hembra, femina, femme. Lumbre, with the meaning of fire. Lumen, luminaria, lumière, with the meaning of light. Sombra, Old Spanish ombra, umbra, ombre. Rule 17. Words that have diphthongized in Spanish and French didn't. Tiempo, tempus, temps. Tierra, terra, terre. Fiesta, festa, fête. Hierba, herba, herbe. Puerta, porta, porte. Fuente, fonte, font. Old Spanish fruente, fronte, front. Bueno, bonus, bon. Rule 18. Intervocalic Cs. From Latin, Spanish retains them, French doesn't. Hacer, facere, faire. Producir, producere, produire. Verificar, verificare, verifier. Decir, dicere, dire. Lucir, lucere, luire. Placer, placere, plaire. Traducir, traducere, traduire. Rule 19. Verbs in Latin ending in are, Spanish retains them as are, and French turns them into er. Cantar, cantare, chanter. Tratar, tractare, traiter. Retornar, retornare, retourner. Salvar, salvare, sauver. Saltar, saltare, sauter. Rule 20. Intervocalic Bs, Spanish retains them as Bs, but French turns them into Vs. Gobernar, gubernare, gouverner. Deber, debere, devoir. Haber, habere, avoir. Labio, labium, labrum, lèvre. Bebemos, bibimos, buvons. Escribimos, scribimus, écrivons. Rule 21. Words ending in cte or cto in Latin, Spanish turns them into che and cho, and French only retains the T. Noche, nocten, nuit. Bizcocho, biscocto, biscuit. Ocho, octo, huit. Hecho, facto, fait. Pecho, pecto, vulgar Latin, pectorina, poitrine. Techo, tectus, toit. Derecho, directus, droit. Dicho, dicto, di. Rule number 22. Words in Latin ending in ka, Spanish retains them the same and French turns them into sh sounds. Vaca, waka, vache. Blanca, blanca through Germanic, blanche. Boca, buca, bouche. Mosca, musca, mouche. Rule 23. Words ending in Latin in e, Spanish retains the e but French doesn't. Fuente, fontaine, fond. Puente, ponte, pont. Llave, clave, clé. Frente, fronte, front. Breve, breve, bref. Intelligente, intelligente, intelligent. Rule 24. Words in Latin with e, Spanish retains them as e, and some of them are turned into wa in French. Saber, sapere, savoir. Creer, credere, croire. Deber, debere, devoir. Tres, tres, trois. Me, moi. Vector, vectura, vulgar Latin. Voiture, meaning car. Haber, habere, avoir. 25. Words in Latin having o and u. Spanish only retains the os, French retains some us. Poder, potere, pouvoir. amor, amor, amour, morir, morire, mourir, corto, curtus, cour, horno, furnus, four, lobo, lupus, lu. Rule 26. Words in Latin having an O. Spanish keeps some O's, some of them turns them into W's, and French, some of them turn them into E. Puedo, posso, peu, pueblo, populus, peuple, obra, opera, œuvre, flor, florem, fleur, hora, hora, heure. Rule 27. Words in Latin ending in ere, Spanish turns them into er or ir, and French as re. Vender, vendere, vendre. Perder, perdere, perdre. Metter, mittere, mettre. Prender, prendere, prendre. Rendir, rendere, vulgar Latin, rendre. Rule 28. Words in Latin having P and V, Spanish retains only the V, and French turns them into V's or even F's. For instance, abrir, aperire, ouvrir, obra, opera, œuvre, saber, sapere, savoir, recibir, recipere, recevoir, cabo with the meaning of cape, capo, chef with the meaning of boss, breve, breve, bref. Rule 29. Words in Latin ending in ingere or inguere, Spanish retains them as ñir or cultism ingir or ingir. French turns them all into andre. Fingir, fingere, feindre. Extinguir, extinguere, éteindre. Ceñir, cingere, cendre. Teñir, tingere, tendre. Constreñir, constringere, contraindre. Atañer, atangere, vulgar Latin from atingere, atandre. Peñir, this is a reconstruction from Old Spanish. Now we say pintar from the past participle pinto, pinta. Pingere, pendre. Junir, this is a reconstruction. Now we say juntar from the past participle junto, junta. From Latin, jungere, French, joindre. Plañir, this is an archaic verb which means crying in Spanish. Plangere, which means crying in Latin as well. Plaindre, which means to complain or lament. Rule 30. Words in Latin starting with X. Spanish retains them, French turns them into et. Extender, extendere, étendre. Extraño, extraños, étrange. Extranjero, relatinized from extraños. Étrangère, extinguir, extinguere, éteindre, with the meaning of turning off. 31. Words in Latin having act and oct. Spanish retains only the C's. French turns those C's into I's. Let's see an example. Factum, facto, faito. Faito was used in the West Roman dialects, and then it became fight, and then fe in French. In Spanish, faito kept evolving into feito. We can still find this in Portuguese, and from feito, fecho, and from fecho, hecho, and then hecho. So let's read them. Hecho, facto, fe. Leche, lacte, le. Leche also went through a similar process. Ocho, octo, huit. Noche, noctem, nuit. Bizcocho, biscocto, biscuit. Rule 32. Words in Latin ending in illus, Spanish retains them as ello, illo, and French turns them into o. Castillo, castellum, chateau. Avecilla, avicelus, meaning little bird in vulgar Latin. French, oiseau. Bello, bellus, beau. Caudillo, which means the head of a gorilla, comes from Latin capitellum, which means the head of a column, and in French got the sense of an ornament and then as a gift and gave us cadeau. Capillo, this word is kind of obsolete in Spanish. Capellus, chapeau. Martillo, martellus, marteau. Cuchillo, cultelos, couteau. And rule 33. Words in Latin having intervocalic C, Spanish turns them into G's, and French disappears them completely. Amigo, amicus, ami. Plegar, plicare, plier. Espiga, spica, epi. Agua, aqua, o. So here we can see the process of how aqua became o. Aqua, agua, erue, ewe, ewe. That's how it became. Oh, I know this is too much information, but feel free to go back to the rules that you found the most interesting and learn them all. This is gonna save you hours and hours and hours of learning vocabulary using just logic and following patterns. Good luck learning French. If you would like to learn more tips about how to learn other languages, feel free to contact us. Share, like, and subscribe, and see you in the next episode.